All right, our meeting is being recorded. Welcome to the IDL SIG online webinar. Today's presentation is BPMN Basics, what you need to know for your content strategy. And our speaker today is Dr. Jackie Damrau. She has an impressive resume and a lot of history with STC. She is the Senior Business Systems Analyst at CBRE. In her role, Jackie models business processes and other department workgroup processes using this BPMN modeling notation to use in gathering requirements by automating existing paper-based flows as well as to help in improving the processes. Jackie has more than 25 years of technical communication experience. And now to talk about her STC stuff, she's a fellow of the Society for Technical Communication. She's a member of the STC North Texas Lone Star chapter, and she's also a member of our SIG, our Instructional Design and Learning SIG. She's also a book review editor for the Technical Communication hard copy publication, also online publication. Jackie's past international positions have been as SIG manager for the IDL SIG, assistant SIG manager for the management SIG. She was elected a member of the nominations committee, and she is was general manager of the STC International Summit Awards back in 2010 to 2012. Jackie has some free time, and she spends it raising her grandkids and reading books, and for some reason the word books is in quotes, as time permits. And you can find Jackie on LinkedIn. I'll put the link to her LinkedIn account in our chat window. And you can find Jackie on Twitter. She's been tweeting about our session. So, Miss Jackie, we are ready for you. Dr. Jackie, excuse me.
Thank you.
Ready for you.
Well, thank you. So welcome, David and Melissa and Vicki, as always, gracious hostess. So Vicki kind of gave you a thumbnail of me, that I am a Senior Business Systems Analyst for CBRE, which is a large commercial real estate company that is global. We have offices in every country in the world. So we have a presence somewhere. You'll see a green CBRE sign for any kind of real estate entity. I am also, as Vicki said, a Society for Technical Communication Fellow, the highest membership rank you can achieve currently. And I do hold certifications as a BPMN certified practitioner. I'll give you more information about how to go off and learn what I know, and I'll share some information about that exam itself. And I am a certified ARIS business architect. ARIS is a BPMS, or a business process management suite. It's an application that helps you do a lot of things in this space. So I sat for the grueling 6-hour test for that many years ago, and am a former trainer of ARIS itself. So I worked for the manufacturer of the product at one time in my life. And you can find me on Twitter at @DamrauJA, or on LinkedIn, just search for me, Jackie Damrau. Feel free to connect with me. I generally accept most connections if you have a valid photo. Otherwise, you might not get connected. So we're here to learn about BPMN, or as it's known, Business Process Management and Notation. The basics are, why would you want to model properly? For the world of content strategy, it is words. But we know that when we start into the world of words, some of us learned old school that we have to start with an outline and then build our content. And some of us just sit in front of the computer, and like a novel writer, we start madly brain dumping everything we know. And then we try to go back and organize that content into a deliverable. Those are ways that, I've been in the world a long time, ways I learned, but then I learned new ways for business processes to use a modeling notation, and I've taken that a step further now. Instead of the traditional outline when I'm thinking about writing a document or a PowerPoint presentation. I model it instead because it's a graphical way for me to restrict myself to a certain amount of things in a box, and I'll show you more detail what I mean by that. But it helps me really get concise with my content, and then when I build my presentation, I keep myself to a particular set of my own personal deliverables, 5 bullet points, so many words. And when I create my actual help files for what I do here at work or my requirements documents, I have a particular set in mind of minimalist writing. What do I have to tell them, and what is superfluous stuff that no one is going to read, so don't put it in there because they really don't care. I'd love for them to care about everything I could possibly want to write about, but they don't. So they don't read it, don't give it to them, keep it very minimal. So to start out with the very basics of business process management and modeling is, what is a model? A model is nothing more than a visual diagram that shows you the activity for a particular process or thing. It doesn't have to be a process, but the start and the end. Everything has a beginning and an end. We know that from writing. We have a beginning, an introduction paragraph. We have our body, which is our intermediate stuff of the real meat of what we want to deliver, and then we have an end, a conclusion or a summary or recommendation. Everything has one of those. Any type of document you create is going to have a beginning and end, and a beginning, a middle, and an end. So does a model. So to take that one step further, what is a process? A process is a sequence of activities that lead from the start to a defined conclusion. And so the graphic is kind of showing you, I'm kind of masterminding something that may be talked about, and I would need to have a graphical picture to tell me how to see this thing or how to write this thing. Taking that yet one more step further, a process model is a map of all of the possible paths or sequence of activities from start to end. When we start into using an application, for example, I may use Microsoft Word differently than Melissa may use Microsoft Word, than Vicki may use it, than David may use it. So I have to account for a business process, for example. If I am in the accounting services group, for example, and we are working with, say, AP processing, what are the avenues that money comes into my company, and how do I process it when it comes in? Or requests come into my company, do they come in just one way? Generally not. You have things coming in through manual submission. You have things coming in through bank lock boxes automatically into your system. You have people walking up to your door and paying you with a check. Any number of ways things can come in. So you have to document all these entry points, and then what happens when they come in. Do they all go down the same path? No, there's exceptions. So this process model reveals the order of activities, how they should happen, and under what conditions they should happen. It describes what happens next in the process. I go from step A to step B. Step B may take me to step C or to step D, but I need to know when I need to go to which path, and then go on, and maybe I'll join up later. It does not describe how an activity is performed. I don't care how it's done. I just need to know what's done. And I don't necessarily care about where or why it's done. It barely touches on what it is or who performs it. Now, it depends on what your process is. If I say the word Swimlane, does everyone know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
We do
And
thumbs
David,
up here?
Hmm?
We'll do thumbs up. I'll agree with you.
Yeah, a thumbs
David is
up.
agreeing with us.
Sure. And so with that said, we've talked about what is a model, what is a process, and what is a process model. And with that, of course, is built in process logic. A model is generally a practical, logical way in which something happens. There's always the illogical, impractical way that something's going to happen. It breaks. It didn't break the way you anticipated it to break. You can never gauge or document for the one-off things that are going to occur. But process logic, we want to look at documenting the current state, or what's called the as-is. So how's this thing being done today? And you meet with your SMEs, or your subject matter experts, and you are directly involved with the process, learning it. What do they do today? Job shadowing them, watching what they do, every step they do, questioning, why do you do it this way? Because as you're questioning, you're looking for process improvement. If you're going to automate something they're doing currently today that's paper-based, you want to look and see, when you automate this, how can you improve the time that they spend? Because the whole thing with automating is you're reducing the amount of time spent working a process. A particular step in a process can be improved upon. It does not define every conceivable possibility. Again, when you're job shadowing with someone, the main thing you want to tell them is do the process the way you do it, not the way the procedure says you're to do it. Do it the way you do it today. And you'll find that they have a cheat sheet that you didn't know about. They have some other ways that they do something that are maybe better than the procedure says it should be done. And the most eye-opening that occurred with me recently, we did a job shadow where we met with a coordinator, an accounting coordinator first, and then we met with an accountant second. And our workflow here goes accountant, accounting coordinator, to accounting supervisor. The accounting supervisor was actually following us on this job shadowing. We met with the accounting coordinator first because that's who was available to us first. We learned, as did the accounting supervisor, this person was not following the book. She was going off doing things, thinking ahead and fixing things that they had no idea she was fixing. That it should have been the job of the accountant to fix, but she was not rejecting it back to the accountant because she said, I can fix it, I don't need to bother the accountant. But then our question was, how often do you fix it and how often does it come in wrong? 99% of the time it comes in wrong. Reject it back to the accountant. Then we met with the accountant, and it just happened we met with the same accountant that was assigned to this coordinator. And I open up the request from the field, which is our real estate managers. I give it a 30-second glance. I've been working with the account for 2 years, so I know what it's supposed to look like, and I send it on. And we said, do you realize that it has been wrong every time? And again, the accounting supervisor is following us. And it's like an eye-opener for everyone that the process was broken, but nobody knew it. That's where the process logic comes in nice and happy. So the process should cover the basic happy path, and I'll talk about what a happy path is and the major exception path.
I like that phrase, the happy path.
You always build for the happy path, because that's how, even if you have writer's block, you build for the utopia of the world. This is how we really want them to use it. And then you go add all the exceptions of how it could possibly not be used the correct way. So once you get the happy path, then you can start picking it apart, and the model will help you identify where you might have gaps or where you have exceptions. So in this process logic, there are questions you can ask, and I'm not going to read these, but basically you want to know, where does it start, what triggers it, where does it end? Where are the exceptions? How do I go from A to B or A to X? Maybe I jump A to X, and do I come back to F, or do I go on to Z? How do I know? You have to ask these questions. So here is the BPMN notation, and 2.0 is the current standard, and BPMN is an official Office Management Group, OMG, standard. It has over 250 objects, which is what you're seeing on this tiny little poster. No one in the world uses every single one of these objects, but they're available to you to use depending on your type of business or industry. So with that said, my recommendation in the last 3 employers that I've had is I take this model, I learn about what my role is on the team, and as the BPMN professional, I then tell them, you really need to take the common objects from that chart and create your own chart. And this is an example of one of the charts I've created for the last 2 employers. I have my 3, 6, 7 activities, the different types of activities that can be done. And these are the things that are physically done. Then I have my events, my start and my ends. I have different types of starts and ends. I have my data objects. Some people are still in the old school world of flowchart modeling, where they have little artifacts hanging off of their flowchart, and they want to know exactly when a invoice comes in and what's the output document or database storage or whatever that is. Your gateways are your decision points. Where do I make a decision? Where do I have to branch off? And then your sequence flows are the line connectors between objects. A solid one means something different than a dotted one that means another one. So at a high level, and I know it's hard to see, but this first blank activity is a task. It's a basic task. We don't know if it's a human. We don't know if it's a system doing it. We don't know who is doing it. We don't care who's doing it. The basic thing is like mind mapping. You just want to get it on paper. You don't care the order. You just want to get it on paper. Then you go back and you look at the item, and in a text box, remember I previously said that I use this to help me build my outline. My rule of thumb on this little box, whatever Visio gives me the standard size box, which I think I have mine set to do 1/4 of an inch around, I can only fit 8 words in there before I can't see it any longer. So my personal preference is if I can't say it in 8 words or fewer, it's too much. And that's where I get down to the minimalist writing. 8 words or fewer, that's it. That's all I can fit in that box. So I've got to really break that step down. If I can't make it, if I have an and in my statement, that's 2 steps. Anytime I have an and, I have 2 steps. It should be, you know, go to the store, buy the food, pack the food, whatever it is. If I have an and in there, something's wrong. So we have a user step. A human actually has to perform the function. They have to hit a key. They have to type something. They have to go get a file out of the file cabinet. That's archaic, but we still do it. Whatever that is that the human has to go and do, that is a user step. If it's an automated step, Outlook is sending an email. The BPMS system you use is doing something. SharePoint is doing something. SQL is doing something. Anything a system is doing that does not require human interaction or pressing of a button is this little service task. And then we get into a human or a system task. If an email is being sent and you need to track that you sent an email, someone received an email, that's the task. They need to receive this email before they can do the next function. You can use the send task, which is the black envelope, and the receive task is the white envelope. And then we have subprocesses. You might have one step that breaks down into a whole other process itself, but how do you document that on a small scale? So you want to show an overall 50,000 foot view, then you're going to drill down to the 30,000 to the 1,000. How do you get there with the subprocess? And then some tasks we have, they reoccur. We get to a point and we kick back. We start over, and that's a looping task. So those are just kind of the brief concepts of how we do things. So next up is what types. I've been talking about process models and all the notation with it. Any questions so far? Silence is golden. I'm moving on.
Silence is agreement.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is these are the different types of process models that are available. Are these the only ones? Of course not. These are the most common that are used in the BPM industry. There is what we call a simple process model. I'll show you one of each of these. We have subprocesses. We have simple. We have expanded. We have exceptions. We have it simple. And we do have expanded, but I don't believe I'm going to show you any expanded exceptions today. We have loopbacks, which is where we have to take a step and go back somewhere. It's not a loop task per se, it's a decision loopback. We have our decision gateways where we split and join. This is where we diverge off the happy path, and we have two or more ways in which something can be done. We have to tell the system which one is the default and which one is the, if this happens, go here, but if this doesn't happen, follow the default path. And if we have to have something occur parallel, so it has to happen at the same time, kick off one path, complete that, you come back, you finish the second path, and then you join up and you keep on going. That's what the decision gateway splits and joins gives you. We have your traditional swim lane. So everyone said they knew what a swim lane is. I will show you a simple and an expanded. I still am a large proponent for a lot of business processes. The swim lane is the best way because in any business, you do need to know who the who is. But the who is by department or by job title. Never, ever by job person, by person name, never. Persons change. Titles and departments rarely change. And then you have the very final one is even, where I'm using a lot of the items that in BPMN modeling notation you can use. Is I'll show you a process model with the events, activities, data elements, and sequence flows using everything as complex as I've ever gotten in anything I've done in the last 9 years. Okay, so your simple process model. Remember that I said everything has a start, a middle, and an end. Notice that my start object is lighter than my end object. That's how I know when I look at anything where my start is and where my end is. In between, I have this process connecting from my start, which could be anything that starts me off. I receive an order from a customer, hence the user task human part. My system automatically, when that order is received, it checks that person's credit to see if they have good credit or bad credit. Based on whatever the outcome of this is, it goes off to the warehouse to fulfill the order. And notice that this fulfill order is a sub-process by this little plus. So if I were to click on that, it should expand to something else to show me what is in this fulfill order process. It's a whole process unto itself. Previous to this, these are just one-step things. They're not a process. They don't have nothing other than I receive the order, it gets checked, and then a bunch of people may get told what to do. The final part is once the order has been fulfilled, it goes to accounting to send an invoice to the customer to be paid, and then we end the process. Very simple. Now, if we take that same process, we can take the from the fulfill order process has a start and it has two ends. I have the end for the happy path and I have an end for the exception path. So my happy path, I just end. My exception path is I'm out of stock. So if I read this, it says when I'm checking stock on the fulfill process, the system is checking my computer-based inventory, and it's asking me a question. Do I have the item the customer wants in stock? If I do have it, I go on the happy path of someone goes and gets that stock off the shelf, passes it to shipping to ship the order. I've fulfilled the order. The fulfill process part or fulfill order part has been completed. I end, and then I pass off to the send invoice step. If I don't have that product in stock, I say no, I don't have it, and I raise a flag, we're out of stock. What do we do? We'll see an example of what we do later. Any questions so far? Nope, moving on.
Well, Melissa has a question that she typed into
Okay.
the chat box. And it
this?
says,
Go ahead. Vicki?
Melissa, why don't you ask your question?
Because I'm at work and I can't talk.
Okay.
Oh, can I ask for you
read it.
then?
I'll read it. Melissa's question is, do you just use Visio to document this or a specialized software? I currently use Visio. That's what my employer has chosen to use. You can use the specialized software as well. A lot of your high-level BPMS applications come with what they call a modeler or process designer, something of that nature. Visio, I find, works. If you don't have the use of Visio, Visio Professional 2013 and higher comes standard with the BPMN 2.0 stencil set. If you have something lower than 2013 Professional, then there is a stencil set that you can get a hold of. You have to Google and find it. It's free. You can get it and install it in your My Shapes. Worst case scenario, you can use PowerPoint, and I have used PowerPoint to do it. It honestly just depends on what you have available. There are some freeware BPMN tools out there. I have some at the end of this presentation, but one that I will tell you is a really good one is Lucid Chart, L-U-C-I-D Chart. They have a very good modeler, and it is built with social collaboration. It's all in the cloud, so you don't like download it to your laptop or computer. It's all in the cloud. I used that at my last contract, and that was an awesome tool. Okay, so we saw the simple subprocess in a separate page, and this is showing you the simple process in an expanded view. So I have my full process, which was the very first slide that I showed you, the simple process, but now I've taken that fulfill order subprocess and you see it expanded within my simple process. So I still have my receive the order, check the credit for the order, and then my fulfill order, see I have my start and my two ends. Every sub-process will have its own start and its own end within the overall process that has its start and its end. So it's the exact same scenario. It's just it's better for some people to see the full process on one sheet than to go to another tab in Visio or another slide in PowerPoint, whatever it is. Sometimes they want it all in one shot. Now that can be dangerous when you're in a BPMS application because those generally are not meant to be printed out. When you do an end-to-end process of something, it can be huge. For example, when I worked at a telecommunications company, our pilot project for bringing on BPMS in the system that we chose was to lay out the end-to-end process for building a site tower. There is a lot to putting a tower on a mountain, on a building, what you have to do to get a cell site tower up. That process, and it involves quite a few pieces. I think we had 40 different processes engaged there. And we had a VP go, well, I want you to print that out. And we're like, you realize it will take 2 conference rooms and 8 walls. I want to see it. And he thought it would just be an 8.5 by 11. We ended up literally taking 2 conference rooms that, like a hotel room, had an adjoining door. We found a plotter. We plotted out this entire end-to-end putting up a site tower from the time the VP gives us money to go put one up to the time we sent the last piece of the last nut or bolt that we didn't use to install the thing back to wherever it came from. It took 8 walls, floor to ceiling. I'm not joking you. Floor to ceiling, plotted walls, 8 walls, and we started them at one wall, walked them around, went through the door, walked them around the other 4 walls, and said, there's your process, and his mouth hit the floor.
I bet. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he wanted to see it end to end. We tried to tell him, you don't want to see it end to end. You want to see components of it, but you don't want to see the whole thing. He insisted. So you have someone who's that obstinate, you give it to them, and then they regret having asked you for it. They won't ask you again, promise you. After going through that, they won't ask you again for print. Okay, moving on. Exception paths. I kind of showed you one previously where we've had the credit check. Is it okay? If it is, go to fulfill order, or we actually talked about an in-stock. But here we have on the check credit, it comes in, the system says, is the credit okay? If it's okay, let's go on with the process. So we fulfill the order, and in the fulfill order, we go to the in-stock that we previously discussed to the send invoice. Everything's hunky-dory, happy path on the bottom. Exceptions can either be on the top or on the bottom. It depends on how you want to lay out your model. And this comes into the information design part of our job, or the instructional design part of our job, knowing how to place something so it is readable and understandable by business people. Your technical people don't necessarily really pay attention to those details, but your business people, your C-level people looking at your models going, how do I read this? You have to know how they like it. My last contract, I worked with a gentleman, all exception paths will be on top. Didn't matter what it was, it had to be on top. He did not like them being underneath. Okay, fine. I can go either way. But sometimes you have to know how to position your material, and I'll get further into that when we get to the more complicated ones. But my exception path on credit okay is, my credit's not okay, I'm going to fail the order. My in-stock is not okay, I'm going to fail the order. Everything else is okay, I'm going to place the order and I'm done. But notice that my 2 decision points, credit okay and in-stock, all lead to the same end point. Thus, my lines nicely join up and go to the same end point. I don't have to have 2 arrows coming into this thing. You can. It is a modeling construct that is allowed in BPMN 2.0, but they really recommend for easy readability, join them once and make it easier to read, because I know it's going to the same end point. Don't pollute it with additional arrow points that don't need to be there. There's times you will want to do that, and it's okay to accept that you can't, or it's just better clarity to have two arrowheads going into the same endpoint or same object. It's a personal preference you have to make on your own. Okay, Loopback. We have the same basic concept. We have a model. We get to a point where in stock, it's not in stock. So I'm going to offer my customer a replacement. I'm going to do bait and switch. We don't have item A that you wanted, but item B is just as good. Would you like item B? We ask the customer, and the customer says, yes, I want item B instead of A. Please change my order. I have to communicate that change order back to my fulfill department that, hey, we're switching that, so fill that one. And I can go around and around this loop as many times until I get an item that the customer accepts. If my customer says, no, I don't want item B, I really want item A, you need to give me my chocolate bonbons, then you're going to fail the order, and at the failure point, we're going to come back. Questions? No questions? Moving on.
We're still with you.
Okay. Now we get a little more involved with the decision gateways, and all these little triangles have been decision gateways. But prior to this, I've only had one decision, and it's in the form of a question. And in these decision gateways, you can't fit 8 words or fewer. The best you're going to get is 4 words or fewer, and it needs to be very question-oriented. You don't have to, is it this? It's just order like this one, credit okay. I don't need is credit okay. Forget the is. Forget the verb. You don't need it. Very succinct. Is it okay? Is it not okay? Does it pass? Does it fail? We don't care. You know, have your object and your decision. In this case, this top piece here is the same process we talked about, except at the credit okay, I have, to fulfill my order, I have 2 parallel paths that have to happen. And this plus inside this decision now says this is an and decision. This means I have to complete one path, come back, complete the second path, and when I have the results from both paths, then I continue on. So the split and join is I'm splitting the path and I'm joining the path. Whatever I split the path with, if it's a plus for the and, or it's an O, or I mean an X for an exclusive, which is called an or. If I have a plus or a X in here, I have to have a plus or an X in here. I cannot have a plus and an X and a plus. It has to be the same thing. So this, because it's an and, means both of these have to happen. I have to have results, and then I can continue. If I get a true here and a false here, I can't continue. The bottom half is 2 different ways that you could model. Again, preferred on a parallel drop is below. That nice little guy I worked for my last contract insisted, again, like exception paths, everything is above. Doesn't matter, below or above, choose your poison and go with it. But you can also, where I have a nice readable, I've split my path, I know where I'm going, I join my path. This is perfect modeling. You have 2 items coming out of this particular step. You're going to this one, and by seeing this decision gateway, this and gateway, I know that these 2 are parallel. I have to have the results from this one, I have to have results from this one, then I can continue on. This is perfectly valid. I don't like it. My personal pet peeve, I don't like it. It's not readable, and the reason I say that, I've been in too many business meetings where they look at it and go, huh? So if I use this construct, it's more readable. They understand. Your swim lane. I'm taking our order process that we started this presentation with, and I've broken it down into the departments that perform the action: sales, finance, and warehouse. I start with what are the sales activities, what are the finance activities, what are the warehouse activities. You see that I stair step, again, easy readability. Previously, I didn't care who the who was. And when you're in initial discovery findings for your content, you don't care who the who is. In the very beginning, when you're trying to get your thoughts on paper, you don't care who the who is. Back up later and put the who in a swim lane. It helps you visualize. But this is where I get to the point of your modeling becomes your graphical visual presentation, because then this thing sings a lot to a lot of people, to your technical people, to your executives. They know who the who is. It sings a lot to even in instructional steps. When do I do what, and who is responsible for doing what, and what will I get from it? So this is kind of showing the same concept. And if I have, like in warehouse, I have finance coming here, I go down to warehouse, and I come back because finance does this last step. Very nice and readable. Now, if you model in Visio, and you see the little hump over, when you intersect a line, there's a little bridge, it's called, or a little camel hump. I hate those with a purple passion. You can model without those, or minimizing the number of those. If you have more than 2, you've broken Jackie's rule of modeling.
Ooh.
You can design, you can model without having those silly things there. What you might have to do, you may have to repeat one of your lanes, like finance may have to have another finance below here. If you end up crossing something and you get that little hump, redesign that baby. You can do it. Okay. David has in 17. Oh. Okay, so by this, did you mean the top or bottom example? Sorry, David. Are you talking about this one, the top one here, or the bottom one here? Okay. I prefer the one in the top of the second dotted box. I prefer the one in the top. Okay, so we talked about the swim lane. Now, if we take in the swim lane, let me back up, sorry, making anybody motion sick. The fulfill order, it is a sub-process in this swim lane. In here, I actually expand it in my swim lane. So you can see what I did. I had to stretch. I had to do some little maneuvering. Again, this is Jackie's personal pet peeve. And this one bothers me. I'll fix it later. I want it center. That's just me. If it doesn't bother you, then go for it. But I am semi-OCD, I'll say. And if it doesn't have a nice angle and go right to the middle, do not stick it here. It loses the mindset of where you're going, because my beginning is over here. Don't bring me here. My eye is going to go here into the middle, and I'm going to go to the right. I'm not going to go to the left. I'm not going to see the left. Honestly, I've had executives totally skip something because I had an arrow pointing the wrong direction. We are somehow directionally challenged. When we see arrows, we follow the arrows. So this is just showing you how you put a expanded subprocess into a swim lane model. And then finally, in our examples of models, here is one that is using just about every type of object that was in my modified BPMN chart that I recommend. I'm receiving the order. So my order, I have the little paper inside my start block. The envelope, that means this order is coming in some way, by paper, by mail, by email, by fax, by telex, whatever antiquated system exists out there. that order is being received somehow. And some people like to know that it is actually something being received. They don't like just a little blank circle. Fine, I can give that to you. Then we go through our process. We enter the order. We check the credit. Our credit is okay. We fulfill the order. And off of the fulfill order, right here, I have an artifact, an order. Yes, it looks like a piece of paper. Not all orders are paper-based anymore. They are electronic. But someone wants to know what is the output of this step. Well, the output is an order. Do we care that it's paper? No. We just want to know that there's something, a document, whether electronic or paper, or other, is generated. Then I go through my in-stock, and I come to my prepare invoice. Well, when I'm preparing the invoice, what are some subtasks that occur here? Well, to prepare that invoice, I have to update the customer account. Customer account lives on a database system somewhere in some database repository. So when I prepare the invoice, it's updating the customer record. They want to know that. They may not want to know what is being updated, but they want to know that it's being stored somewhere. Well, this gives them the very 50,000-foot view that the database is being updated. If they want to know more about that, you have a whole other process that says what that does. My order is done. If I have my exceptions, the same thing. I follow the same exception path. And my order failed, my order done shows the closed black envelope inside, meaning I've communicated some way to my customer that the order failed or the order was successful. Again, whether that's email, phone, slow pony, turtle, whatever, that's how you communicate. Where's that darn turtle, Vicki? Where's that turtle?
Oh, wait, I wanted the bunny. I'll put the bunny.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of stop there. I filled your heads full. What, if any, questions do you have so far, or are you totally with me? Okay. And do you see this as a concept that you might be able to put in place? Again, it's not directly to content strategy, but it is if you bend it that way, and I have done so. I mean, there are content strategy modeling constructs out there. There's, what was it? It just left my mind. If you look at my slide share, look at my LavaCon 2012 workshop that I do with Joe Goldner. It's out there. It's OPM. That's what it is. Joe knows of a modeling construct for content strategy specifically. It's a little more involved than I ever wanted to get into, so I never went there. But you can also search SlideShare for Joe Goldner, G-O-L-L-N-E-R. He's a STC member and does a lot of presentations at LavaCon. And you can learn a lot specifically in the content strategy space. But I can take what I've shown you today and apply it to almost anything. I've done it to instructional design that I've had to do training manuals, to my help files that I write, to my requirements. Just to get my head around things, I'll map it in this fashion. It's easier for me to understand, and then I start building the guts. Okay, so moving on from there, hopefully you want to know more. And questions usually come, well, is it education or is it experience? How do I get to know this? Well, it's a little of both. The things you want to know, there are 14 things you want to know. You can read this later. This comes from a blog that I would totally recommend you sign up for. It's free. Go to bptrends.com. It's a monthly blog that comes out, everything you ever want to know about BPM in small, sizable bites. Very good, but they recommend that you, as a business analyst, these are the steps that we go through. And notice one of the steps is create a business process flow diagram. You should never, ever be in anything that doesn't have a process diagram. In your requirements, especially if you're working on applications, they should have a wireframe of what they want it to be, but it's the underlying process that drives that wireframe. How does work transpire? It goes from, again, I receive an order, I check credit, I process the order, I pick the stock, I satisfy the customer. Each one of those is a process. So your front end, your UI on your front end has a lot more than just one user. You have to document where all the components going. When I click submit or approve or reject or whatever, where's it going? What's it doing? Who's it going to? Why is it going there? These are the things that you can pull out in a process model and follow that flow. Here we use my BPMN diagrams that I generate. We give it to our testing group, to our QA, when they're writing test scripts. They're actually highlighting each of the lines from one box to another to make sure they have all the test scripts written for that one step. And then they go on the exceptions. Do I have one for that? That's how we do it. We document each one of those, and they're highlighting, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Luckily, the ones here are printable, not like my telecom one. So, education. I want to be educated. You can get a degree. Kelley School of Business has a BS, and Widener University has an MS. Haven't been a participant of those. I just know they're there. I know they're touted by most of the blogs and such that I live in. Professional associations. There is the ADPMP, so the Association of Business Process Management Professionals. They have their own .org site. You can go out there and learn about them. They have online training. They have in-person training. They have live training. They have their own certification. Go off and do. I've never gone off and done. There's, of course, I am a business analyst. Not everyone is, but they have their own group. You can go off and visit them. They have a small portion in process modeling, not as much as I would like to see, but that's not their mainstay. BPMinstitute.org is another one. They also have their own certification, their own online training in this space. And the first one and the third one follow the BPMN 2.0 standard religiously. They built their business on that. Certifications. You can see all the types of certifications that are out there for the BPM space. The ones in red are the ones that I have participated in. BPMEssentials.com. Bruce Silver is the owner and principal of that company, BPM Essentials. He is the creator of BPMN standard from back in 1.0 days. He has his own training. It is, at the time I took it 7 years ago, it was $600, minimal cost, 10 online modules you have to sit through, self-paced. You don't have to attend at a particular time. He does have a book that you can get through Amazon.com. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. You read that book, you take his 10 online modules, you have 2 exercises that are graded. The first exercise, you get to model whatever process you want to model, and you turn it in. And he gives you parameters of what you need to model. You get back, well, why this? Why not that? Why did you do it this way? Why did you think about X? But he doesn't tell you how to fix it. He just poses questions, and you're like, what do you want? You scratch your head. By the 5th time you get this thing back with questions, you might get an inkling what you think you're going to give him. By the 8th time, you finally passed. He is a hard grader, but believe me, you learn BPMN inside out, upside down. There is no way. And then when you get to the second exercise, you think, okay, 8 times, nailed it. I'm going to get this one on the 3rd time. No. But for that $600, you work your butt off. But again, you know what you need to know. That's how I know what I know. I lived it. I had to get a tutor. Luckily, the place where I was working at the time, another person in my group had gone through this at another company, and he was looking at my second exercise and going, well, this is what he's meaning by this. And this. And so I ended up getting the expertise of someone who had lived the same pain. So it's very good. And I mean, I would not, most people would say if you go through that much trouble, it's not worth it. This is how you learn, though. This is how you learn. Okay, I'm almost at time. University of San Francisco, they have an actual advanced professional certificate program. Theirs is 9 months, birthing a baby. You have to attend once a week. There are videos that you have to listen to, and then you have an online session with an instructor telling you, and they have a threaded case study that you have to complete. It's not difficult. It's very introductory basic, but it's what you need to know about the world of business process management, not so much modeling, but management, and the processes we go through, the analysis, the design, the test, the review, those things. That's very well worth the price. And when I took it 3 years ago, it was $6,000. Don't know what it's up to now. Yeah, it's a bit pricey, and I had been looking at that one for 4 years before I finally dove in and decided to do it. But really, bang for your buck, I'd go bpmessentials.com. You are going to learn more there than you could potentially learn. And the rest of it you can learn by going to bptrends.com and just really reading their blog and following what they're doing and doing some of your own investigating. All right, so where did I get this stuff from? Here's the books. This is Bruce Silver's current 2nd edition, BPMN Method and Style. His course is built off of this book, of course, because he wrote it. Part of it is written off the OMG actual BPMN 2.0 standard. You can go out there and download the standard, which is very tersely written, I'm going to say. It's like any government type regulation. It's written in that kind of language. It's not easy read. It's very complex read. Process Mapping is a book I would recommend if you're just getting started. Robert DiMatteo actually, his book is written more about an oil shop. So if you take your car to get an oil change, every process model in his book is about getting the oil changed in your car and the process that a grease shop goes through. Business Process Change is Paul Harmon's book. This is the latest 3rd edition he just released. I read the 2nd edition. This is all based off of his government experience. He is the principal of the BP Trends that I'm touting. Very good. He's been in the industry for over 30 years. Again, the experts that he brings onto his blog, you learn a lot. And they are worldwide, not just U.S.-based. And then, of course, the ABPMP organization has its own body of knowledge that you can take their certification with. Again, if you're not even going to join the group, you can get a hold of the book. For those in STC, if you do purchase this from Amazon, be aware they didn't have it edited. It has no page footers and headers. It's the worst part of self-publishing I've ever seen. So if you have your red pen out and find over 1,000 mistakes, you're in my ballpark. I happen to know someone who helped put that together, and I railed him when I saw the number of mistakes and said, do not put out a 4th edition unless I edit it because I can't stand to read it. Anyway, there's my resources. You can find those online. Questions? There's only a few of us. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff back behind here. You can find out all different types of modeling options. What I've shown you today is just a smattering. But depending on what industry you're in, you might use one of these other things, and there's examples back here of what all those things are. With that said, I'm concluded.
You are concluded. So I've been trying to put links into the chat box. As you were mentioning them, I put them in the chat box. That way people can have live links.
I believe a majority of them may also come from in here as well in my resources. I do have some of them in here, so.
And all the links on the slides are live. So
yes.
all you have to do is click the slide.
So if there's no questions, we will let you get back to your day, and I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. And Vicki, I believe you have some housekeeping to conclude with.
Yes, I do. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you, everyone, for attending the recording.